as I work with cases, a lot of terminal cancer cases, quote unquote terminal cancer, people who said you've got 1 to 3 months to live, and then 15 years later, they've been cancer-free for 15 years.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 138 of the Gordon and Cherise show. It is so good to be back with each one of you, and thank you so much as you are following us through this crazy cancer journey. And we have a very, very special program for you. In fact, this is going to be a multi-series program. I want to introduce first my silver fox.
Cherise, this is the first time you've ever acknowledged me before any special guest. So thank you so much.
I have to acknowledge you because that beard, he's rocking it. He's doing this for me. As I am working on slaying cancer, you're working on that beard, and I think it's a beautiful compliment.
All right. Well, I'm really excited about this program because Dr. Harmon, we've shared professions, but obviously, since I've been out of the profession for 30 years, he's had the experience with the research with functional medicine, as well as all the advancements with chiropractic and natural health and everything else. So this is going to be a dandy. So let's go ahead and get started and introduce him and go from there.
If you don't mind, Dr. Terry Harmon, can I give just a brief introduction about you?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love that.
First of all, I would say not only are you our very, very special guest, you're my own personal doctor in this journey through slaying cancer. You're a friend that came into life at the exact right moment before I even knew that I needed you, and the services that you provide, God, was before the whole situation. And we met through a mutual friend that was having a special time together. We were all meeting in Destin, Florida for a purpose that had nothing to do with what we're doing right now. But it was so special because the day before I received a cancer diagnosis, Dr. Terry Harmon I go from kind of this despondency, this despair, to Destin, Florida, where we meet. And you are officially a God-anointed cancer slayer, among many different things. You're a doctor of chiropractic. I know that in 1997, you graduated from the Palmer College of Chiropractic. And right now, your practice, you're in Kentucky, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Kentucky.
In Morganfield, Kentucky, but you're helping people all over the world. All over the world. And I had no idea how much I would honestly benefit from our relationship and from your knowledge until I walked right into the fire. But I am so grateful for your expertise. And I think everybody who is listening is going to have something to glean from what you have to share today. Whether somebody is dealing with acute cancer or just having to face what our world is bringing as far as challenges for health.
Terry, I'm more fascinated with the posture of your functional medicine education. So if you could explain that to us a little bit and kind of unravel that, because there's so many people today offering so many different vitamins and tips and everything else, but I want to hear your experience.
Yeah, so my journey with functional medicine started before it was called functional medicine. Like, my journey started 25 years ago through my very first conference, just learning, discovering. And so it was great. Like, we began basically helping our clients with toxicity testing 25 years ago. And it helped so many people to be able to do a heavy metal toxicity test with a mineral analysis, help people detox their heavy metals, address mineral deficiencies. And that's what got us started. And over the last 25 years, it's been kind of case after case after case of discovery. And then ultimately an entire kind of platform or system has been developed really out of what people need, which is for you, the audience, it really looks like this. Your body is fearfully and wonderfully made. You're designed to heal. Our bodies are constantly healing, whether we feel it or realize it or not. Our bodies are constantly healing, but there's a challenge in relation to supporting the healing versus what is attempting to tear it down. So essentially, over 25 years, the system has turned into this, is helping people discover deficiencies, toxicities, infections, inflammations, and you'll hear the plural there, infections, inflammations, assessing autonomic nervous system, assessing mitochondria, assessing the microbiome. So there's 7 things there that can be like, holy cow, slow down there. But we are designed to heal. We're living during an amazing day and age, but a day and age that presents challenges. And so in 2023, my kind of sales pitch to the world is, you're a human being, you matter, God made you for purposes, and yet we need to be able to take a look and actually see where things are at to support our body towards healing and peak function.
That's right.
And lastly, real quick, is that, and then that what that has done in our particular approach is it's allowed us to create a lineup of tests that are very, very unique and what I consider to be the most accurate, specific test in the world today, to help us really clarify for our clients what's going on and celebrate what's great, and then address that which is off.
That sounds fantastic. I'd like to take it from this approach right now. Let's talk about health and let's define it in the sense that right now there are approximately 110 million people in the United States that experience some form of pain, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. And so we're ridden with pain. We're ridden with cultural change. We're ridden with the elimination of truth. There's so much formalized dead religion as well as medical systems that we're having to deal with right now. And I'm being very straightforward. How do you, by your experience and the changes you've seen in almost 3 decades, how is health defined today?
Yeah. So the first thing I would want to, so I love the question, number one. Number two is, health is not simply how we feel, right? We all desire to feel amazing. I hope that that's innate, right? Like, we just want to feel amazing. We want to be, so to speak, unlimited, and we want to have energy. In my world of health, what I would want to communicate to the world is there are 3 systems that govern our adaptability and govern kind of how rapidly we're healing, or sadly, how rapidly we're breaking down.
Okay.
So it is just a smidge complex. But when I say a smidge, I'm talking high school level complex. The issue is we're living with, honestly, like first grade level education as it pertains to health. We've been misled as it pertains to health, right? There are skills needed to thrive in health. There are skills needed that a doctor cannot provide, but a doctor can assist in us developing awareness and skills. So here are the 3 systems: autonomic nervous system, our mitochondria, and our gut microbiome/microbiomes, right? We have 3 systems that govern our adaptability and really where we're at in the breakdown versus build up phase of health. What is health? Health is the ability to be adaptable, heal, recover. That's what health is. If somebody feels great, but they've lost the ability to adapt and recover, well, even if they feel great, they're breaking down, and tragically things could be developing in their body unbeknownst to them.
Happened to me.
Yes. And so for me, after all these years in practice and just the goodness of God in relation to taking me on a journey to serve people, right? It's the goodness of God that has been on a journey to where as I work with cases, a lot of terminal cancer cases, quote unquote terminal cancer, people who said you've got 1 to 3 months to live, and then 15 years later they've been cancer free for 15 years. We have loads of those, and then we have had people that we've onboarded in the last 2 years. Again, 3 months to live, completely cancer free. In some cases, within 3 to 9 months, like literally just every scan completely free, what have you. But that's been a journey whereby I've said, just to be clear, uncensored, like, Lord, show me. This is your child. I want to serve them. Give me details. Teach me how to help people thrive.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Since you are working with Cherise, and everyone does know they've been so gracious following the journey, and she's had stage 3B cancer, melanoma. And would you say then there was a breakdown in one of those systems? We're talking gut, autonomic nervous system. And again, what was that third system you were discussing? Mitochondria. So where do you see the common breakdowns with people who then develop cancer? Because Cherise, for instance, we eat all organic. She exercises. We practice our faith. She's in prayer. It was like she was doing all the right things.
Yes. I was doing the right things, but blind to the specificity of what I was missing.
Generally, it typically starts with one of those systems breaking down. It could be the mitochondria. It could be the microbiome, the gut. It could be the autonomic nerve system. And then it tends to be one goes, that impacts the next.
Alrighty.
Right. So commonly right now in America, the two biggest kind of right out in front of you challenges are energy and body composition challenges. And then the third one would be like depression, right? Depression, anxiousness. Those are the three common kind of symptomatic challenges that people have. Hey, doc, what do you have for energy? Hey, doc, what do you have to change my body? 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, what have you? What do you have for anxiousness, nervousness, depression, what have you? Those are all linked to those three systems. So for Cherise, as an example, like it would be most likely what happens for a lot of people is first the gut starts to go. Right. Or it could be there's stress, like significant stressors, and we're just going to keep going. But the nerve system is now in a sympathetic dominant state, like a fight or flight state. Mm-hmm. And we can live life and we can kind of go on from there and quote unquote be successful. That's why I'm so passionate about this, is that everybody watching this video, like you can test these three components. You can test them. And if you are watching this and you say, I'm healthy as can be, number one, I say, just thank God for that, but get tested. Because once one of those systems breaks down, then it will tend to tug the other ones down until eventually for people, they're going to have some type of chronic disease. Could be cancer. Could be heart disease, which is also called the silent killer. So I'm really passionate with people who say, I feel fine. Look, cardiovascular disease is silent, right? And then it kind of goes from there. So it's get those systems assessed and work on it.
Okay, so what specific tests are you talking about, just for the audience member out there?
Absolutely. So, number one is foundational test. So foundational test would be what I call legitimate blood work, comprehensive blood work. Most new patients I have who have even had some really good holistic care, their blood work is paltry, right? It's 20% of really what I believe an adult needs to gain clarity on how you're doing, right? Comprehensive blood work isn't a mitochondria test per se. It's not a gut microbiome test per se. It's not an autonomic nerve system test per se, but it does provide a lot of clues in relation to How do we support those systems?
Can I speak into this for a second?
You Cherise,
as
I
the
know
patient?
what you're going to say.
Because when I went to the lab to have these drawn, the woman had worked there for years, okay?
Yeah.
And she is a cancer survivor herself. And the only reason why she was willing to spend the time inputting all the different tests into the system was because she's like, I see my sister here and she's going to fight and overcome this. I'm going to put these labs in. She said, I wish you would have come a day ahead of time because of all of the time she put in codes that she didn't even know existed in the system. They're not used to these tests. I have had a lot of comprehensive tests in my life. I've never had anything like this, nor has the woman that actually drew my labs. So it was fascinating on this side of it to see that.
If I may speak, I've had functional medicine treatment as well. And as a chiropractor, and I have to admit, when I saw your report after all the blood work, it was 56 pages.
No, that was a different thing.
Okay, but the comprehensive testing that you had.
The blood work was a big report too.
It was a big report. I just smiled. So it moves one from non-clarity and chaos in their mind, wondering what they have, because so many people that we speak to have chronic inflammation. Okay. It moves it into clarity. So back to you, Terry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I love it. And regionally, we'll say regionally where I'm at, within probably 4 hours, every lab in our region has learned a lot from us over the last, like, it's a chiro patient. And what's amazing is they end up referring us a ton of people because they're like, holy cow, like, what is this? But when I work with somebody, I feel like it honors them and it does them justice to say, okay, let's take a peek. And then every single test that I order has come out of a learning experience, like every single one. So it's sometimes a patient will say, why do you need that? And why do you need that? And why do you need that? Which is totally fine. And I say, well, 17 years ago, we had a case where we couldn't figure it out. And then whatever language you want to use, God woke me up in the middle of the night and said, study ceruloplasmin. And I'm like, that's why we study that test. Like, that's why we do that. 17 years ago, God loved Mrs. Jones so much that he taught this knucklehead about this pathway.
Wow.
Right. So that's one of the things that part of my life's mission is to see a change in this thing called healthcare. I don't really care conventional or natural. That's irrelevant to me. It's just healthcare. I want people to understand that God made them, God loves them, God is for them, like, and that they're designed to heal. But if we are massively deficient in 7 things that are required for the body to function optimally, and we're toxic in 10 things that are carcinogenic and break down the gut microbiome and the mitochondria, well, gosh dang it, it's going to be hard to flourish, and we're probably going to suffer, right? And if you look at, like, I like to use analogies that like really work. Like, if you look at a garden, right, and it's really a process of deficiencies and toxicities and infections, right? That's what it is. Like, if you want your garden to flourish, well, you got to make sure that there's no deficiencies in the soil, there's no toxicities in the soil, and there's no infections riddling that garden, right?
That's right.
Pretty simple. We're designed like that. Like, we're designed like that, more complex, but we're designed like that. We're designed to flourish. And so just to go back to your question, a couple other tests, certainly a comprehensive stool analysis. There's very particular labs that I use, like very particular labs that I feel like are the best. And then there's toxicity testing and organic acid testing that allows us clarity. So, we put that together with our clients, and we have 15 tests that are our foundational test. Most patients will need 2 or 3 or 4 to really get a foothold there. So that's how that works, and that's how we get started.
Well, with the fecal, the toxicity, and the urine test that I took, that was the 56-page report that came back.
That's right, Cherise.
And that is where my eyes got wide open with you. Yeah. And the last conversation that we had, patient to doctor, was so revelational to me, because what I learned, first of all, is as comprehensive as the blood work was, it wasn't enough to determine everything that was happening in this garden. It wasn't specific enough to deal with, there was a known parasite. It actually called the name of the parasite out that I'm dealing with. There are toxins from mold and environmental toxins that are poisoning my body. Each of those names are specified in the report, where they come from. And the thing is, you know, I love knowing this because, yes, is it alarming for me as the patient? Somewhat. But the other part, Dr. Terry, is it's like, finally, there's some really strong, let's get to the root. Because when I'm going into a chemo room to do immunotherapy and the sweet woman next to me, she's drinking a Dr. Pepper and eating a candy bar.
Yeah.
Bless her heart. You know, her body's probably wiped. It's maybe sugar's the only thing that's making her feel better in the process. But it's like what she's doing is feeding the cancer instead of curing it. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm so fortunate because I believe that God wants us to identify the roots and to pull them out. And these tests definitely are, for me, what's eye-opening. And these are the things that have to be exposed to be healed in my life. So
Yeah.
the clarity is beautiful.
And I say this, like what I get to do, you know, I get to work with God's children. And this thing is ever moving, like it's ever moving, but in my opinion, it just keeps getting better because certain companies are doing dynamic things with their labs that weren't available 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And there's a scripture that says where sin abounds, grace abounds much more, which means, hey, when there's chaos and there's crazy stuff and there's quote unquote negative things abounding, God always has more grace to combat the craziness in the world we live in. We just have to be open to that grace. Like we have to be pursuing and seeking. And just like you started this whole thing with, right? God knew, God had you protected the whole time. And yet the opportunity to really just chat with you on this format. Thank you, first of all, for having me. Like, number one, thank you for having me. But then number two, like we have a world full of people who really need this revelation, who really need to understand, because there's been a lot of heartbreaking things happen to people because of illness, because of sickness, and tragically because of early death, that what was missing was this information. Like that's what's been missing. And
that's what I want to shout from the rooftops is that that this information is available. It's as specific as the person listening. There's nothing that is nebulous about it. There's nothing that is, I took so many supplements before I met you. I listened to so many podcasts. I've listened to so much. All it did, though, as this healthy organic eater that works out all the time, I was still putting my body in a state of stress because I was not necessarily taking the supplements that my body needed for specificity and healing. I needed a healer to show me how to heal. I needed specifics and I think we all do. And so whether somebody feels like they're sick or not, we can overload our bodies with so many supplements that we don't even need. And I think break some of the processes down even more instead of building it up. I'm just so grateful that you are in so many people's lives. You've read over, 50,000 labs at this point?
Yeah, I think the last kind of math we did was around 60,000 labs. It's one of the things that if you're not doing it, like if you're not in the seat, you can get behind really quickly. Like, I had 2 clients this week that their functional medicine practitioners have retired. And these are people that I highly respect. But when I was looking at their test, I was like, these tests are about 5 years outdated, right? And I say that and I will definitely probably not ever do any of these podcasts. If I ever were to retire, I will I probably will not offer information anymore, because everything is constantly, I think updating is the best term.
Well,
Yeah.
and today with health, as you were defining health and the adaptability factor, you have to be a specialist.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where you fit in. Now, we're also saying to people, we're not saying go against your oncologist. We're not telling
correct.
people if they've got a critical injury not to see a neurosurgeon, but related to the alternative measures that have healing benefits and can maximize and optimize your body against toxicities, deficiencies, infections, inflammation, and different disease processes, even viruses that they're finding now that are attached to cancer. You need a custom formatted program for yourself. And that's the beauty of the blood work.
100%.
Okay.
And the rest of the labs. Don't forget the other labs.
I know, honey. The other labs kind of sticky, aren't they?
So they are, but I think definitely so, because I believe that I'm working with some of the best doctors locally. They
Absolutely.
are experts. They are wonderful. But what I'm finding is everything is so compartmentalized. Every doctor has to stay in their lane, and nobody can veer outside of that in the traditional medicine route to look at all of the whole process that's happening in the body. And something inside of me through my experience is, well, that's good. I'm glad to know that lane, and I'm glad to understand it. But I believe that God has made us whole for a reason, like our whole body. Everything has to be looked at, mind, body, and spirit. There is a lot more going on. And without knowing the root cause, without also helping with the spiritual cause, you gave me a book to read early on in the process that dealt with the emotional roots of cancer. I mean, without tackling all of these, the road of transformation, people are just going to get bulldozed into a system, and they're not going to discover the beauty of getting on the other side of the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have 5 minutes left on this podcast.
Yeah.
Spend some time with a valuable takeaway, and we're going to shoot another podcast.
Yeah.
And I want to hear different things: autonomic nervous system, Aura Ring, private label supplementation, all those different things on the next podcast. But for now, what would be the valuable takeaway for someone who is shocked by a cancer diagnosis or who's bewildered from chronic pain? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think, the Bible says this. It says, hope deferred makes the heart grow cold. And the first thing that hopefully people watching this and listening to this would kind of glean is that no matter what's gone on, no matter how maybe bleak it is, no matter how many things you've tried, there is hope. Like, that's the number one thing is there's hope. Then from there, it is a process of engagement that, I think one of the takeaways is begin functional medicine testing. Simply begin. Right. Begin with some legitimate labs. Our office can work with you no matter where you're at, or you can seek out, help to find a great functional medicine practitioner. So, we've got to get data, right? And I'm a big faith guy. Like I just love God. I know He loves me, and I know He's got great plans for my life. And yet there's also the data side.
Right.
That we absolutely need. I had a client this morning, just to give you an example, had 5 major deficiencies. The primary reason for consulting us was out of control diabetes. Just like when I say out of control, I mean out of control after, a long time of medical care. But he was never going to get anywhere without the discovery of the deficiencies and the addressing of the deficiencies. It's really emotional to talk about it, because this was a guy literally almost to the point of not being able to function. And after years of, we'll call it care, no one ever discovered that he had 5 major deficiencies that made it impossible for his body to regulate his blood sugar. And so, I would just encourage people, number one, there is hope. And then number two is it's just a matter of just beginning to take action and on the things that God is prompting you on, right? And just listen to what God is prompting you on, like courageously, would be my advice to people.
Wow, that's great advice.
That's beautiful. What was the patient's response to the revelation of these 5 things?
So this was a tough big man, right? So it was awesome. It was tears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was tears and just a little bit of frustration too. Like,
Sure.
why has nobody ran these tests on me before? And so as just powerful, just so powerful and so exciting. And yet again, I have this passion inside of me that I want to get this message out to people because it's a true transformative message for the world. And it's something that the world desperately needs right now. And I think we'll talk about it more in the next session, but about this thing, and then we'll just get a little teaser called the Missing Americans Study, that as I've shared it with people, I've just seen people's eyes really open and say, oh, I understand now why it's going to be necessary for me to really do things different than I have been doing it, or do things different than, the people around me. If we're not doing things different, but then strategically and specifically different, then we're in a conundrum with a lot of chronic health conditions and a lot of, if you will, surprise health conditions. So, yeah.
Very good. Cherise, honey, what is your valuable takeaway from everything?
100% gratitude. 100% gratitude is my takeaway. That, first of all, I am not in this battle alone. First, I know God is with me. You are with me, my silver fox. And I have an incredible team. Dr. Terry, you're with me. I cannot thank you enough for the expertise, the love, the shepherding, and the fact that you are bringing this not just to me, but to so many people, because so many people need what you have to bring to them. You've devoted your life to revelational science, to the science that is coupled with God's, the one who created it all, his brilliance. And you're infusing life into this woman that's speaking right now by all of the things that you do and that you've helped me with. And it does restore hope. Everybody that's listening, I want you to know that my true belief is that we heal in community. We heal in community. Yes. This is my tribe. This is who I choose to surround myself with as I heal. And I invite anyone else, whether you feel extremely healthy or you're in the doldrums of your own suffering, come into our community. You're a part of it. We want you to maintain health if you have it, to get restored if you don't, because it is always possible for you.
That's right. Very good. My valuable takeaway is going to piggyback off of Dr. Harmon here, and it's this. We have to do things differently. We eat differently because we're going to have to eat even more radically differently because of all the chemicals and nitrates and everything that's in food products. Some of your mold tests found Roundup in some of what you had with your blood work. We have a very toxic external environment, and we don't even know it. Everything from technology to positive ions out of air conditioning units to, different wires over the house to transmit different waves and frequency and vibrations. And we're having climate changes, and there's a lot of changes going on. So it's so important to be part of a process. Mm-hmm. And so what I would say is don't be upset with your past if you've made mistakes. Start with the present. That's where that future hope becomes real. And then
Beautiful.
you see Christ in the present. And so I encourage each person, don't give up on your health. Don't give up on your faith. And I agree with you, Cherise, heal in community.
Beautiful.
So that's the conclusion of today's podcast show. You can get a hold of us at gordonandcherise.com on our website. And we have everything there that will move you to the app, and you can watch all the podcasts. And we're going to have information about Dr. Terry Harmon and his clinic and how to get a hold of his website. And I just want to say thank you very much for this podcast, Dr. Harmon.
Thank you so
and
much.
we look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Amen. It's an honor. Thank you.